So, I got the chance to play the latest entry into the Jack and Daxter series, Jack and Daxter, The Lost Frontier. And in my honest opinion, it's not that bad. Okay, don't get me wrong, it's nowhere near the excellence of the first trilogy, and it's nowhere near as good as Jack X or the excellent spin-off Daxter. I will admit one thing. This game did continue Jack into a safe spot, so that sparked the idea of what could come next, a new Jack and Daxter series or a reboot. Hello folks, it's me Len, and today I'm going to be making a video discussing the possibility of a new Jack and Daxter game from Sony Computer Entertainment, and not by Naughty Dog. So for those of you that don't really know too much about Jack and Daxter, then allow me to explain. Jack and Daxter was the next franchise created by Naughty Dog after the Crash Bandicoot series that was critically acclaimed on the PlayStation 1. Naughty Dog had made a really good name for themselves with these games, including 2, 3 and CTR, which was the game they were making during the production of Jack and Daxter The Precursor Legacy. This was released in 2001 for the PlayStation 2 to critical acclaim, so Jack and Daxter made Naughty Dog well known in the PlayStation 2 along with how Crash did in the PlayStation 1. The story took place on Sandover Village and the islands. Now, Jack himself is a yellow-haired elf boy kind of character alongside his friend Daxter, who is also the same. Now, they mischievously go out to the Dark Eco Islands, and Daxter accidentally gets knocked into a pool of Dark Eco, causing him to turn into an Otso for some reason. Even though in the game, if that happens to you, you die. Forces of nature are hard to understand, so I guess I can let this pass. So anyway, the game has you running around as Jack in an open world space that was completely brand new for Naughty Dog at the time. Jack could have the spin attack, the punch, the roll, everything. And this would help you on your journey as you went across the islands to turn Daxter back to his normal state. Now, this is a bit of an opinion from me, but I don't really like this Jack game as my favourite. Now don't get me wrong, it's not bad by any means, it's just not my favourite. I mean, I've already seen this before with Banjo-Tooie and other open world platformers that have came before this. I mean, Spyro the Dragon was clearly an example of what Jack and Daxter took inspiration from. Various MacGuffins to collect, enemies to attack, etc. However, I would be lying if I said that Jack 1 didn't do this very well. So, after the final boss of the first game, things would change drastically. And I mean drastically for the Jack series. Jack 2 and Jack 3 were completely different in tone and atmosphere. Jack now is grown up and now has a voice, and he swears. However, Daxter remains the same Otso character that he's been known for in the first game. So after Jack wakes up in a prison cell after 2 years from him getting lost in a futuristic city, the journey continues with him getting guns and stealing cars, and oh, I can see where this is going. But I have to admit, I actually enjoy this a lot better. Yeah, there are some platforming segments here and there for Jack once you go out of the city and go up to these different obstacle courses, but the gunplay is actually a really nice addition, and it actually makes me intrigued more in the game, and it gives the game a bit more originality than what Jack 1 had. So as we all know, Jack 2 and Jack 3 would continue on this gunplay, and then we would get Jack X, a racing game, and then we would get Daxter, which is a prequel, sequel kind of game that takes place between Jack 1 and Jack 2, so you can understand where Daxter was during the events of Jack 2's opening. But then things went bleak. Naughty Dog was making Uncharted Drake's Fortune. In my opinion, I don't like the Uncharted series that much, so I don't really have much to say about it. I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong, the gameplay is fine and everything, and the gunplay is definitely nice, and it's a third-person adventure game, it's not really that bad. But I've already played Tomb Raider for that. Now, I don't really think that Naughty Dog actually left Jack in the cold entirely. I mean, they did include a precursor orb as one of the items that you can get as the item in the game. This new style that Naughty Dog was going for clearly didn't fit Jack and Daxter, or Crash Bandicoot for that matter, so those two franchises would never ever see the light of day as a sequel to Jack 3 or Jack X. But here's the thing, Naughty Dog were actually making another Jack and Daxter sequel that would have taken a much different tone like how Ratchet & Clank Future did. Now, as we know from Insomniac Games, Insomniac never strayed away from Ratchet & Clank, and they actually continued on with Ratchet. The gunplay remained and the platforming was still the same. But all in all, it was a continuation to the Ratchet & Clank games that fans could appreciate. Jack and Daxter, on the other hand, tried this, but there was one gigantic thing that got in the way. Jack and Daxter wasn't being made by Naughty Dog anymore. Sony Computer Entertainment had decided that High Impact Games would handle the next game in the franchise. This was of course what I mentioned in the intro of the video, Jack and Daxter The Lost Frontier. Now this was meant to be developed for the PSP exclusively, but for some reason Sony Computer Entertainment decided that it would be better as a PlayStation 2 title as well, so that would mean that it would be on both consoles, the PSP and the PS2. In my opinion, I can't imagine seeing Jack and Daxter The Lost Frontier working very well on the PS2, and from what I've seen from gameplay videos and long plays, the sound glitches and it doesn't look nearly as enjoyable as the PSP version does. With Jack and Daxter The Lost Frontier, as I did say that it's not a bad game, it is a little bit watered down. Don't get me wrong, it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world, but look at this. He can't roll anymore, the punches and kicks don't look nearly as fluent as they did in the original, and the gunplay is a little bit weirded out because he uses a staff now. I mean, all the time you just see Jack holding the staff all the time and not really standing on his own like he did in the original games. It's nothing really too game breaking, it's just something that I nitpick. Jack and Daxter The Lost Frontier did try some things new that weren't actually bad ideas on paper, but they didn't really work well in comparison to the original games with how they did with the Dark Eco and the Light Eco power-ups. For example, Dark Eco was mythed to be this dark energy that couldn't be transformed into light, but for some reason it gets transformed into Colour Eco here, and Dark Daxter clearly makes no sense. Now, I can understand what they're going for with the hijacking things with Daxter going into planes and taking apart the pieces, but with Dark Daxter, unless it's some kind of new eco we've never seen before, him having Dark Eco showered on them and then getting transformed into this gigantic monster makes no sense. I mean, we clearly see Daxter fall into a pit of Dark Eco here, but for some reason Dark Daxter happens if he gets more eco. Well, it would be a lot more humorous if it was Light Eco, because Daxter can't be returned back to his normal form, as we already know from the first game, so it would be comedic to see Light Eco and the Dark Eco mixing together like water and electricity, and then for it not to work. However, I will admit that I think that the plane controls aren't that bad. I mean, it's kinda like with Jack 3 with the car controls most of the time. They're nothing Star Fox worthy, but they're nothing really that bad either. The story itself isn't necessarily that bad, but it does take a little bit of a step away from what Jack and Daxter's known for. For example, the Brink was never actually explained in the story. Also, Kira becoming an eco-sage isn't really a bad idea, because we can clearly see that she has an interest for it in Jack 3. Overall, Jack and Daxter The Lost Frontier isn't necessarily as bad as I really think people make out to be, but in comparison, yes, it is the worst Jack game. It doesn't do most of the stuff that Jack 1, 2, 3, X or even Daxter does nearly as well, but as a continuation, does it do good? If you look past the plot holes and all that stuff that I've mentioned beforehand, this could have set Jack and Daxter off into a brand new series of games made by High Impact had it been good. And it actually did get a PSP Essentials release. But the thing is, Naughty Dog just abandoned Jack for Uncharted and The Last of Us. Speaking of The Last of Us, do you want to know what it was beforehand? Well, take a guess first. That's right, it was Jack 4. At least Naughty Dog actually thought about doing something with Jack. However, Jack was going strong and not a single game was out of touch or balance. But then we have this. Naughty Dog was trying to bring back Jack with Jack 4. Yes, actually Jack 4. Now with Jack 4, this is what was going to happen. It was going to be a lot more realistic, and it was going to feature a completely different art style that was even more realistic than The Lost Frontiers. Now I'll be honest, The Lost Frontier did have more of an adult-ish kind of feel to it, with Jack and Kira looking older than they actually did. I mean, this is normal. We see them as kids in Jack 1, then we see them growing up through Jack 2, 3, Jack X, and here we see them in The Lost Frontier when they're actually adults. So it's not necessarily that bad of an idea. Don't get me wrong, some people might actually enjoy this and might think to themselves, hey, you know what, I used to be a kid when I played these games, why don't I play these when I'm older? And that isn't necessarily a bad idea either, but I was born wrong that time when Jack came out, and even I wouldn't see this as appealing in the slightest. However, Daxter looking as realistic as this is not good at all, and I'm glad they never went through with this. Due to this idea of a realistic Jack game not being received very well, they scrapped the idea and just went back to Uncharted and made it into The Last of Us. I mean, Jason Rubin and Andy Gavin left Naughty Dog in round about the time of Jack 3's production, and if it wasn't for them, then Naughty Dog would never have been the company that it is today. So Naughty Dog making a new game is completely out of the water. So what's next? Well, let's take our attention to Sly Cooper for a second. Now, with Sly 4, this was an idea that many people thought that Sucker Punch was going to do next after Sly 3. To their dismay, that would never have happened, if it wasn't for Zanzaru Games. Now, Zanzaru Games actually pitched this to Sony Computer Entertainment and they were impressed. Whereas Naughty Dog and Sucker Punch might have made their two franchises, it turned out that they don't actually own them. It's Sony that does to the license. And it was actually Sony's decision to give this to High Impact Games with The Lost Frontier, and it was actually their decision also to give the idea of Sly 4 to Zanzaru Games, seeing as though Sucker Punch wanted to move on. So what I'm getting at here, Jack and Daxter could easily come back as they've been cameoed in PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale.
My friend was merely commenting on the small likelihood of your leading us to...
Did that tin pot just call us worthless?
PlayStation Move Heroes, etc. So it's just as easy for them to come back as Sly Cooper had done, if a developer is willing to step up to the plate and continue the Jack and Daxter franchise. As we see in PlayStation All-Stars, they actually took the Jack 3 design, as we see the rags all torn up and definitely differentiated away from the Lost Frontier design. So if a developer has the enthusiasm and the courage to go up to Sony and ask if they can make Jack 4 in a stylized reboot, that would be good for Jack and Daxter. I don't really think that a continuation from Lost Frontier would be really good, as it doesn't really make any sense now that the stories kind of came to a close after the cliffhanger. Not to mention, it's nearly a decade since the Lost Frontier, so why would it matter to continue the story? So my idea would be a reboot, a retelling of Jack and Daxter, or possibly like a brand new story that we've never seen before. Maybe they could explain some of the things that we've never seen, like Mar, how his existence came to be, and the precursors. We've never really explored these yet. At least not in the way that Jack and Daxter 1 and 2 and 3 never explained. So anyway guys, that's basically my whole entire thoughts on Jack and Daxter coming back, if it ever does. Anyway, I'll see you in the next video, goodbye. Oh, by the way, I'm back to making normal videos, but not as nearly as frequently as I used to, and live streams will be a little bit scarce. But anyway guys, if you have any video ideas or thoughts or whatever, then be sure to comment them down below and I'll be sure to get to them. Anyway guys, thank you for watching and I'll see you next time.
You just left some of my short fur behind.
I've got Phoenix's ship on the scope. He's not gonna get away that easy.
So it's just you and me, Jack. A gentleman's game of fox and hound. But ask yourself, which is which?
Jack, don't! It's a...
He's headed for those falls.
We got him! Like shooting fish in a waterfall barrel.
Sorry, old chap, but the first rule of gentleman's combat is there are no rules.
Wow! Serious piratage!
It's a trap!
You're lucky I like you, Jack. Normally you'd already be a ball of flame. Shoot his engines and let him land. The hard way.